I'm going to show you how to make a cutlery pouch. So it's somewhere that you can put your cutlery in, your metal cutlery from home, and then roll it up, tie it, and take it out and about with you, so then when you're in a cafe you don't have to use the plastic cutlery which then ends up in landfill. First of all, you need to get some pieces of fabric. I've got leftover fabric, 20 inches by 10 inches, and you need 2 of those rectangles, 20 by 10, and then to make the tie, a long strip, 20 inches by about 3 or 4 inches. And I chose to use 2 different fabrics, and you'll see why when you make it, because when you open up the pouch it looks really nice inside to see a contrast. You need to start by ironing your fabrics. Just make sure they lie nice and flat and they're easier to handle. And you want to put the fabrics pattern to pattern. So you're going to be working on what we call the wrong side. Then when you turn it inside out, which is the right way out, you won't see the stitches. They'll be on the inside. So iron your patterns together. Have a think about which way you want the patterns to run. I've got crowns and I would like the top of the crowns at the top of the cutlery holder. Don't forget to iron your long strip that goes eventually to be your tie. Now I iron that flat, and then this time wrong sides together, I carefully iron it in half, and this will give me a guide of where to fold in the rough edges. So I iron it in half, and then I open it out and I can see a crease down the middle, and I take the opened out edge, rough edge, and put that to the middle crease and iron again. And I do that all along one side. So you've got the rough edge that you've cut into the middle, and then the other side rough edge that you've cut into the middle. And this would just make it easier to sew because the ironing crease holds it in place, so when you're sewing you don't need to pin it, because it is quite fiddly because it's quite thin, so it would be a difficult thing to pin. Once you've got both the cut edges going into the middle like that, you simply fold the whole strip in half and then iron all the way down. Okay, and we can put that aside for later. Okay, back to the large pieces that you've ironed. I'm just going to turn off the iron. Save electricity. Back to the big pieces that you've ironed. If you can make sure that the edges, the corners, roughly meet up. They should meet up pretty well because you cut them to about the same size. But we will be neatening them up later. And then I'm just going to put 4 pins just to hold the fabric in place when it's being sewn. Don't put them too close to the edge, otherwise you have to move the pins when you're sewing. I'm also then going to fold this fabric, doubled up fabric, in half, find where the halfway point is, roughly, and mark that with a pin. And that's because when you're sewing this up, you do want to leave a bit of a gap, because you're going to turn it from being the wrong way out to the right way out. And if you leave a bit of a gap where you're going to actually attach the tie, it makes it easier to attach the tie neatly, and means you only have to do one more bit of sewing up at the end. So now we're ready to sew. I want to have my opening on this side. This is the side I want the tie on, because I'm right-handed and I roll from right to left once it's rolled up, and then I do the tie there. If you're left-handed you might want to have it on the other side. Right, so we're going to now sew, starting from 2 inches, maybe 3 inches below where you put the marker for the middle point. My sewing machine is set up with the needle in the middle of the foot, and I'm just going to use the edge of the foot as a guide, so I'm probably about 1/2 centimetre from the edge for the hem. When I get to the corner, I don't stop, I just make sure that the needle's down and then lift the foot and turn it. I just finished off, and I did the same when I started actually, by pressing the reverse button so it moved back and forth, so it was just a nice strong bit of sewing at the start and at the very end. Now I ended up finishing about 2 inches away from that midpoint again, so now I've got a gap of about 4 inches, which you'll appreciate when we have to turn it back over. Right, I suggest taking out the pins now so you don't stab yourself when you're trying to trim any hems that need trimming. We trim the corners, so you trim across the corner so it makes a neater corner when you come to turn them through. So do that 4 times, once in each corner. Don't trim too close to the stitching, otherwise you'll just cut through the stitches and then there'll be a hole in the corner and you'll have to hand sew that up later if you do accidentally do that. Now in some places I can see that the fabrics, I haven't matched them up exactly, I mean I didn't pin all the way around, so anywhere that there's a bit of the fabrics are looking a bit messy or like there's a bit too much material, I'm just going to trim. Not in lots of places, it's just in sometimes when it's bits poking out above the 1/2 centimetre hem. Can you see there's a bit poking out, so I'll trim that off just to make the hems lie smoothly. Right, just tidying up as I go. Always good to have a bowl handy to tidy up into. Now it's the magic bit. You turn the sewing inside out. Taking particular care with the corners. Push your finger into the corners. And then you have a nicely hemmed, double-sided piece of material. Set the iron again. And iron over your double material. Works better if you do one side than the other because it is thicker now. And you will still have little threads poking out in the bits where you haven't yet sewn up because you had to leave a gap to turn it back out, and you also had to leave a gap because you're going to insert shortly your tie. So I am now using the iron just to neaten up these edges because it will mean that they stay in place when you try and sew over them later. So making sure the threads are tucked in, and then that gap is still there, it's just not so noticeable and it'll be easy to sew over. So now we need to fold up your cutlery holder into its proper shape. To know how to do that, we use the ruler, measure 10 inches down the long side from the bottom, 10 inches down the other long side from the bottom, and then join up the mark with a ruler. I'm marking in tailors chalk, a special tailors chalk pen. You could use normal chalk, or you could use a Bevel handwriting pen because that's washable and it will come out if you put it in the wash. Okay, so then you know where to fold up your pouch too. Then we're going to make some marks to show where to sew up to make the pouch smaller so it will hold the cutlery, which is quite thin. Now it was 10 inches across, but now it's actually only 9 inches because we've had some width taken off by using from the seams. Now because it's 9 inches, I'll make it easy and I'll do every 3 inches first. So at 3 and 6 I'll make a mark, and then halfway between them at 1.5 and 7.5. The middle section I'll leave nice and big, between 3 and 6 inches, because you might have to put something wider in there, maybe children's cutlery or maybe a reusable serviette, something like that. The bottom I'll mark 3, 6, 1.5, 7.5, and then I'll join these up. Now, to make it easier, I'm going to pin this flap in place. Next thing to do will be to insert the tie, but we need to just hem that first, so that's what I'll do now. So we're going to hem the end of this tie. So I've unfolded it from where we ironed it into a closed, folded up shape. And I've turned over about an inch, half an inch of the hem at the end, and I'm just going to sew that in place. Cut the threads off. Do the same at the other end. Unfold it from where we sewed it, where we ironed it. Fold over an inch, half an inch to an inch, and just sew that down. Then you refold it along where we ironed it. Fold it in, ready to sew. And I think we'll put some pins in to help us. Keep it nice and neat. And then we can sew up. I don't want such a big hem this time, so I'm not going to use the edge of the sewing machine to press a fit as a guide. I'm just going to put the needle a little bit closer to the edge. And remember, at the beginning and the end of sewing, sew forwards a bit, then put the reverse foot down. cut off any loose ends. There you go. Have your tie. This needs folding in half and then placing into the pouch where you left a gap. Pin it and then just check when you fold up. See, that's a little bit high, but if you put a bit of cutlery in, you realise you won't fold over so high, and actually that ends up the tie in the middle. So I'm happy with that. Now we can sew up the sides, making the edges of the pouch. Remember at the start and the end to use the reverse motion. I'm going to use the edge of the presser foot as my guide for the width of where to put the seam. I sew back and forth over the same spot a few times to make sure that the tag stays on. I only sewed up just as far as where the top of the pouch is. You don't need to sew any further. Right. Cut off the extra threads as you go to keep everything neat. Should be in there, but I also cut it off already. Right. Now repeat on the other side. If I was you, I'd sew from the bit that's already joined by the fold of the fabric up to the open bit, just in case it bunches up a bit, it will sit smoother. So you'll have to sew it upside down so you can't see the fabrics there, but because you've pinned it, you know it's held in place. Have to keep checking just to see how far you need to sew. Again, cut off any loose threads. Now we're going to sew up the 1, 2, 3, 4 parts to make the smaller pouches. Remember, at the beginning and the end of sewing, always sew forwards a little way and then backwards a little way using the reverse button. Keep your sewing secure and stop it from unthreading. I like to cut off the threads as they go along. time to test it. So there's your cutlery holder. So you put your cutlery in. Put the top over, roll it up. Put the tie around. Tie it securely, and there you are, ready to go. So you might wonder why I've got two. Well, I wanted one of them to use, and then I've got the other one spare, so when this one gets dirty from being out and about or having used cutlery put in it, I can put it in the wash and then use this one.